Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Norman Cornett, art critic, curator with the composer, musician Andrew Paul MacDonald here at Éclats, E-C-L-A-T-S, Contemporary Art in Montreal. He's the guest of honor for the exhibition Eyes Wide Open. Now, I must admit, what's my goal in this group exhibition? To compose a visual symphony. So for me, it was a no-brainer to invite Andrew Paul MacDonald, a true composer and musician, and to create a dialogue between the visual arts and music. So, Andrew Paul MacDonald, when you come here, and keeping in mind my operative principle that's documented in Alanis Obomsawin's film, since when do we divorce the right answer from an honest answer? What's your take, honestly, on this exhibition?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored that I'm the guest of honor. It's a very, very beautiful exhibition. I'm seeing pieces, I'm seeing pieces I've never seen before, but I'm also meeting artists whom I didn't know at all. And their work is of a very, very high caliber. Mm-hmm. I'm impressed with everything that I'm seeing here. So wonderful job curating, and you certainly know some wonderful artists. It is a symphony of color, of images, of moods, of different, the way I think about music, actually. So I think you were successful in that regard.
Well, part of what led me to this, Andrew Paul MacDonald, is the school of French music, end of the 19th century, early 20th century, Debussy, Ravel, and the notion of chromaticism. Do you perceive a relationship between musical chromaticism and visual art?
Okay, so I don't have synesthesia like some of the great composers of the past, like Scriabin or Olivier Messiaen, but I do appreciate the chromatic colors of the orchestra, the chromaticism that we have in fine arts today. It's really quite wonderful. It's interesting that you bring up this particular era. This is the era of Scriabin, for example, and his great work, Prometheus Poem of Fire, where he used in the orchestra an instrument called the color organ. I don't know if you know about this, but the color organ, he programmed it in such a way so that with certain chords, certain colors would appear. And so when I saw this piece performed by Toronto Symphony a number of years ago with a color organ, and they had the projection of the colors for different harmonies that Scriabin had composed into the work. And these are the harmonies these are the colors that he saw when those harmonies were sounded, like those special color for F sharp minor. But also an artist from this period, early 20th century, Camille Claudel, had a great influence on me. I went to the Rodin Museum, where most of her works are kept, and this is back in the early 90s. And then I wrote a piece for the string quartet called the Quatuor Claudel. They're still around. Anyhow, this piece I called Quatuor pour Camille. And the different movements are based on different sculptures that I had seen in that gallery and studied them quite carefully. And it was the flow of the images, also the colors of the onyx pieces were amazing, and it had a real impact on my music. Something closer to the modern time is the work of David Sorensen.
Yes, who I knew.
Yeah, he was a very dear friend of mine, and he gave me one of his paintings, The Red Guru, and I was inspired to write my first symphony based on this painting. So the colors and the image, the very hazy image of a seated guru in this painting, gave rise to a gigantic work for symphony orchestra, which was premiered by the Calgary Philharmonic back in 2005, I believe.
And at that time, their new concert hall.
Yeah, the Jack Singer. Very, very special concert hall. And this work, it's about war and peace, literally. And the first movement is very, very intense and conflicted. The way the lines and the colors work in the painting, and it's a two-movement symphony. It's about a 40-minute piece, but it's in two movements. The second movement, which is about the same length as the first, is about peace. And it's full of lullabies from all over the world. And I have them intertwined in this big, I think it's a very, very beautiful piece. And it's like the seated guru in the middle, reminding us that with all the conflict, we still have opportunity for peace and hope. And I remember Eleanor was with me at that concert, and one of the things I had at the end were the musicians who would put down their instruments at certain points, and this was all staggered throughout the orchestra. It was a big orchestra, about an 80-piece orchestra, and they would call out peace. And at first you don't know what they're saying, and then it starts to resonate with you. You understand, and it's done in a kind of a random way, a chance operation, so to speak, so that it comes out of this, out of the music, which is unfolding as a huge canvas of what I hope to be love or hope.
Speaking of chant, now when you mention some of your favorite pieces and your own compositions, I'm reminded of the opera, the original opera of ancient Greece. For example, in the Pacific Opera Society, the narrator assuming such a role.
Right.
But more to the point, one of the reasons that it seemed to me obvious to invite you, a composer-musician, to this exhibition, Eyes Wide Open, believe it or not, was lyricism. The relationship between the lyricism of voices, the lyricism of colors, and to come to an ascension, dare I say a coda. Do you see a relationship between visual lyricism and sonic, oral, vocal lyricism?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, if we think of a painting or a sculpture, it's static in terms of like it's not it itself is not moving in time. But as we look at it, we look at one spot, and then our eye moves around the image. So time is involved. And to get the curve on that sculpture, for example, your eye has to follow the curve in order for us to get the essence of curve. And moreover, most wonderful artists will have us focus. Will focus our attention to one spot in the work before we discover the rest of it. And that's really important because from a composer's point of view, I'm dealing with time always, right? So I take the listener, or the viewer, we could say, through the composition from one point. We have the beginning of the work. It's very, very important. It's where everything starts. It's where my musical materials are first set out, so that I can then explore them. The lyrical part is in juxtaposition to the more challenging or dissonant parts of a musical composition. And I think that we find that too in contemporary art, where there seems to be something wrong. We have a question mark. Why is that like that? And it's not until you take in the entire work that you get the sense of how that dissonance is resolved. And lyricism always works with an ebb and a flow. And the flow is when things are moving forward easily. The ebb or the stop is where there's dissonance, or there's something that's stopping the flow forward. So I believe that lyricism works like that, and it's all the highs and the lows, and I see that in visual arts too. And this is just like, I'm not a visual artist, but I've looked at a lot of paintings and sculptures over the years, and that's my take on that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to discover the art at Éclats, ECLATS, Contemporary Art in Montreal, the exhibition Eyes Wide Open, as well as the music of Andrew Paul MacDonald, which you can find on Spotify and throughout the web. I'm Professor Norman Cornett.